Okay, good morning, guys. Thank you for coming today. We're going to do U.S. History Semester 2, Unit 5.1. We're going to discuss the Black Power movement. I kind of chose this lesson because, as you know, this is Black History Month. And I thought it would be kind of important that we kind of highlight some of those very important people in African American history that maybe don't get as much attention. You know, we talk about Dr. King a lot, and he's very important, but there are also a lot of other people that made very, very significant contributions to the civil rights movement in different ways than Dr. King. So I want to talk about some of them today. So as you can see before you, you have your bell work, which is a series of 6 pictures, and then at the bottom is a description of each figure and a name. I want you to see if you can match the name to the description to the photo. So you can just take a few minutes to fill it in, and then we'll go through them. These are all people that I think are incredibly important, and maybe at the time they were active, they were kind of viewed differently by society. They were kind of, had a very different, public view than Dr. King did. So I wanted to kind of focus on them a little bit because I think a lot of what they worked towards and what they believed in kind of is very relevant for today. And we're going to talk about some of those issues today too. They're about things that are maybe important to you guys. Even though none of you here are African American, there are issues that may relate to you in your life. Let's take a minute and we'll go through some of these. Anybody has any questions? You need help? Remember, if they're wrong, that's okay. We're just kind of trying to stimulate.
That was the leader of the Black Panthers.
Yes. See if you can figure out his name. That's okay. That's all right. Okay. So number 6 is kind of easy because I only put one woman on here today, but I think you'll figure that out. So look at how many of the people in this list here have you actually maybe seen their picture before or heard their name or some of those names before? Were there a couple that maybe you recognize a little bit?
Muhammad Ali,
okay.
Malcolm X, and that basically.
Okay. Well, yeah, those are two of the more well-known people. Okay, we'll take another half a minute here, and then we'll get into it a little bit. Okay. Let's go for it. So how about number 1? Anyone care to hazard a guess on that? Who that is?
Marcus Garvey.
Marcus Garvey, correct. And what letter corresponds with him?
It was a Nation of Islam, right?
Close. You're close. He came a little before. Marcus Garvey inspired a lot of the leadership in the Nation of Islam. He came a little bit before them, though. So we're looking at B. An early civil rights activist who stressed the importance of black people respecting themselves and demanding their own dignity. He wrote a book called Up From Slavery, which was kind of about, he wrote in the 1920s, which was about freeing yourself from that slave mentality. So he's considered Malcolm X's father was a strong supporter of him. Muhammad Ali's father was a strong supporter of him. So that kind of helped influence their sons' opinions about their own self-identity and their own worth later. Okay, how about 2?
Bobby Seale.
Bobby Seale, yes, very good. Who was?
He was the leader of the Black Panthers.
He along with Huey Newton, were the founder of the Black Panthers. What do we know about the Black Panthers? Dante, have you ever heard about that? Not the comic book character, but the political group. Dante, what have you ever heard about the Black Panthers?
They were like.
Have you ever? Hold on a second. Have you ever heard it at all?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I did. I heard it at the.
Well, if you took a guess, what were they about, based on what he looks like in that picture? You think they were kind of serious guys?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, anybody?
They were kind of like protesters, basically. They were like all against obviously slavery and stuff like that.
Okay.
Like that, the way that.
Good. Okay, good. Well, we're gonna get into them a little more specifically later, but good. Okay, number 3. Everyone pretty much knows this one. You see him a lot. Who's that? Malcolm X, yes. Who was?
the damn it.
Anybody over here want to?
He was the early follower of like Martin Luther King, right? It says right.
Not quite. He and Dr. King were kind of opposed to each other. Well, they were, or at least they were portrayed in the media as being kind of opposed to each other.
Oh, he was the national Islam spokesman.
Yes, he was. In his youth, he was a petty criminal who went to jail, and while in prison, he met a Muslim man, and he became a member of the Nation of Islam while in prison. And when he left prison, he became a minister in the Nation of Islam, and then he became their spokesman. Has anyone ever heard anything about the Nation of Islam before? Okay.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Well, what do you know? What do we know about them?
I've only heard the name. I've never
Okay.
heard it.
So they were founded by a man named Elijah Muhammad in the 1940s. They were an organization of Muslims, a religious organization, but predominantly for African American men and women who converted to Islam. And they kind of they favored a form of black nationalism or black separatism. They favored black people becoming separate from white people and living their own culture because they felt that whites were never going to treat them fairly. So they should form their own groups and their own societies. All right, how about number 4? Muhammad Ali, yes. What is he famous for? For being a boxer. Okay. Okay.
Oh, and apparently what was it called? Draft dodger or something like that.
You're not wrong. I wouldn't.
Deserter.
He wasn't so much a deserter. He was more what you call a conscientious objector, and we're going to get into that too. Meaning he was called for military service and he refused service.
So yeah,
but on religious and social grounds. We're going to get back to that later. But yeah, you could some people did call him a draft dodger and a traitor.
Yeah.
That was one of the knocks against it. We're going to get into that though. Okay, number 5. It's kind of a strange name for this guy. It kind of looks like Dante if you look at it.
He's the co-founder, isn't he, for the Black Panther Party?
No, almost. He was an associate of the Black Panthers, but he was an early associate of Dr. King. And then later he took a more radical approach. We're going to get into him a little more later too. And lastly, that lady with the pretty hairdo there, who's that?
Shirley Chisholm?
Shirley Chisholm, who was the first African American woman elected to Congress from New York, who later ran for president. 40 years before Barack Obama, she ran for president as a Democrat and received 150 votes at the convention, which is nothing at the time is amazing. Okay, we're going to come back to this later because the exit ticket's on the back. So I'm going to cut to my lesson real quick. Okay. As the 60s drew on, many African Americans became frustrated with the pace of progress on civil rights. Even Dr. King and his nonviolent methods began to come under criticism. Issues such as poverty, lack of access to jobs and housing, and continued abuse by the police led some to believe that more radical attitudes and actions were needed. Are some of those issues still with us today? Okay, so what, especially that one about violence by the police, what movement can we tie to that period in the 60s too?
Like what has happened that is related to that?
What specifically can you think of an event that kind of ties to that back in the 60s?
Back in the 60s,
or now, today, or things like you say in terms of violence by the police.
You remember that Larry King thing that happened?
Okay.
They pulled him out of the car and the police started beating him. That. Okay. What else? I think he was 13 at the time. The 13-year-old kid.
The boy with the pellet gun.
Yes.
And then there's unfortunately there's been dozens of cases in the news lately about abuses by police, and people have that's where the Black Lives Matter came from. And so those are still issues today. And then poverty is still with us. Some people would argue that it's not a matter of racial discrimination; it's a matter of class discrimination. That people who have less are discriminated against and kept down. Okay, so Stokely Carmichael, that's that guy, that handsome man, number 5 there. He was an early associate of Dr. King, and he was a leader in the group called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which led marches in the South, most famously in Selma, Alabama in 1965. As the 60s wore on, he became more and more radical and more frustrated with the pace of progress. He was arrested over 30 times for political action and jailed. He is credited with coining the term Black Power. So that term springs from him as a symbol of political and personal empowerment. When he assumed leadership of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, he expelled all white members. He felt that the Civil Rights Movement at that point needed to focus on African Americans alone. He's famously quoted as saying, "We've been saying freedom now for 6 years and we ain't got nothing. What we're gonna start saying now is Black Power." And that scared white people. Why do you think that might be scary? A black man saying in the 60s saying something like that?
Basically, I think that what happened like hundreds of years ago is gonna happen to them now. They think they're gonna slave or like something like that.
Oh, okay. Or maybe the revolution was coming.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, good. So that was, and then moving on, Malcolm X. Says he was a Muslim minister who converted to Islam while in prison. He became the spokesman of the Nation of Islam. They believed that white America would never give African Americans fair treatment. Okay.
Stephen Colton, please.
So African Americans should create their own separate institutions and communities. Minister X left the Nation of Islam in 1964 and softened some of his positions on blacks and whites living together. A year later, he was, as having been viewed by a traitor by the Nation of Islam, he was assassinated by several Nation of Islam members at a rally in New York. Now we get to Bobby Seale. Bobby Seale's a really interesting character. Bobby Seale and the Black Panthers, they were founded in 1965 in Oakland, California, in response to police brutality. Bobby Seale, along with his associate Huey P. Newton, they organized groups of young men who would monitor the police, would very famously patrol the streets in their black berets and leather coats, were carrying shotguns. Because California law at the time stated if you displayed the weapon was clearly, you could wear a rifle on your back.
Yeah, the open carry.
Exactly. Yeah. At the time, so the police would try to say, "Hey,
it's still going on.
Yeah, sure.
Texas, California, and a lot of states.
They very famously stormed the floor of the California legislature carrying shotguns. And they were fully within their legal rights to do so, being they were displaying the weapons properly. Which once again scares the heck out of white people. In addition to those kind of radical political actions and kind of maybe advocating more forceful resistance to oppression, they also provided free breakfast and free lunch for kids at school before the federal government did. Before there was Head Start, before there was aid to food aid to children in schools, the Black Panthers were feeding kids and providing after-school programs. They opened in several different cities. They opened up food pantries where they would give single mothers in need of food. They would help them give them the food they needed. That kind of part kind of gets pushed on the back burner with the Black Panthers. People think about the radical thing. They think about the shotguns. They think about the leather coats and the power salute. But they actually did a lot for their community. Being that they were a little more radical and a little more leaning towards violence. And they did have kind of a socialist political leaning more towards a communist point of view. They were targeted by the FBI. All of the members were under surveillance, and Huey P. Newton was actually killed in a shootout with police in 1968, and Bobby Seale himself served time in prison on what I believe are very, very trumped up charges. All right, I want to show you a little video. This is, so we'll cut the video there, please, for a sec.